Hey YouTube, this is Adrianoni22 and Sergeant coming at you with a new video series for our channel. Today we're going to be talking to you guys about competitive deck building, basically. What makes a deck competitive? What's the difference between a quote-unquote competitive deck and a just pal around with your buddies type of deck? We're going to go over some supporters, some trainers, and some Pokemon that can actually help you on the way to taking that fun deck that you play with your buddies and turning it into a semi-competitive build. Sergeant?
That's absolutely right. The big thing is like what is the difference between, say, a deck that you're just getting into it and you want to know why you're having a hard time playing against people that haven't played in a while, and you want to see what makes their deck so much better than mine. And it's not always necessarily the Pokemon, because this season we have definitely seen a lot of different decks come out. It's not just dark Pokemon with Darkrai. We're seeing fairies. We're seeing the new Charizard. We're seeing multiple rogue decks like Plasma Eevees. We're seeing Greninja Miltank. We're seeing a lot of different types of different decks that are considered competitive, or what people wouldn't consider competitive, that are topping really well. They're doing really well. Pyroar Charizard, in fact, took second in Nationals, and it only got beat by an Yveltal Darkrai deck, which, to be fair, Yveltal, since it came out in base XY, has been dominating the scene quite a lot.
Actually, that matchup was in the finals. It was Landorus, Raichu, Mewtwo.
That's right.
Which actually really surprised me because you wouldn't think that, or did that deck run Garbodor as well?
It did not. That deck was to be fair, was a counter meta deck. It used the Mewtwo to counter big basics that used a lot, like fairy decks. It used Raichu to counter Yveltal, and then he used Landorus to counter Darkrai. With the Raichu and the Landorus, it was mainly tech towards countering Yveltal Darkrai, which we did see a lot of in the national tournament, and I assume we're going to see a lot of that in Worlds as well here in the next month.
Oh yeah, definitely, because they won't be able to use Furious Fist to destroy it. But anyway, guys, why don't we just go ahead and get into it now? The first thing we want to talk about is what makes a deck not competitive. A not competitive deck is something that isn't well-rounded. I mean, a great example is any theme deck that you can buy in the stores. Okay, what I mean by this, for example, there's the Helioptile deck that came out with the release of Flashfire. Has a great card. I really don't think Helioptile is that bad. For 1 energy, you can search your deck for any 2 types of energy and add it to your hand. That includes special energy, DCE, rainbows. Being as most of our special energy is rotating, it's not as good now, but it's still viable. I mean, if you need that DCE that next turn, you're good to go. But the rest of the deck, if you look at it, it has like Shinx and Luxio and no Luxray. It has Pidgey and Pidgeot, no Pidgey, or Pidgey and Pidgeotto, no Pidgeot.
It always happens. I always get that confused.
Yeah.
And another good aspect on that as well is that I believe that is one of the very few cards that allows you to search not just energy, but any energy. At the moment, there's no
way to search special energy out of the deck.
Outside of very particular case like Coerce Machine with Team Plasma. That lets you search for a Plasma energy to a Team Plasma Pokemon. But outside of that, there's not a card I can play that lets me bring out a Rainbow energy or a Prism or the blends that are still around and just bring it straight to the field. So I definitely have to admit, for a basic and for 1 energy,
it's stage 1.
It was the stage 1, that's right.
Yeah, it's the stage 1. Now, what's the downside to that? Now, the reason that card hasn't kicked off, you guys might be wondering this, is because it adds it to your hand and it's an attack. So your turn ends and you can't do anything with it. All your opponent has to do is go in. And your chances of getting that energy back are, well, 1 in however many cards are left in your deck.
And that is a good case right there why the supporter N is seeing so much play. I have a general rule when I play Pokemon. For instance, if I'm using an Ultra Ball to get something, I'm not going to Ultra Ball for something that I can't play that turn. Because if my opponent knows what I want, because I run an evolution deck at the moment, I run Greninja Miltank. If I Ultra Ball for a Greninja turn 1 and I have a candy in my hand, and the opponent could probably figure that out, they're probably going to end me. So not only do I lose my Greninja in my hand, I lose my candy, but I also lose the Ultra Ball, which are limited, of course. You only have an X certain amount of Ultra Balls, and then I lose the 2 resources that I paid. So essentially, the opponent plays 1 card to mess up. So I lose 2 cards, and then I also discarded 3 cards that I generally can't get back. I don't have a way to generally get an Ultra Ball back. Well, I use Dowsing, but I wouldn't use it for an Ultra Ball. So that's why. That's exactly why there are some good cards like that have good abilities, but they just don't work the right way.
Right. And that's also something I really want to mention to you guys really quick. These videos are for veteran players as well as new players alike. So when we mention things like, that Helioptile, that's something a veteran player would know. But, if you're, a younger kid or brand new to the game, that's something that you may not have thought of. It also comes down to sometimes how you play the game. And that comes with experience, guys. You can't blame yourself for losing every game if, A, you don't have the cards you need to make your deck better, or B, you just don't know how to make those type of plays. And we can go over some of that stuff in later videos.
So the big thing we're going to start right now on what's the difference between a big competitive deck versus a casual deck, a not as competitive deck, is we're going to start off with the support line. What are some good supports that you can run in your deck that makes your deck, gives you more utility, more draw power, and can also make it harder for your opponent to play around? And I'd have to say, with this last set, Flashfire, probably the biggest meta change we've seen lately is that Lysandra. It's a supporter. So you can only use it once. You can use 1 supporter turn, so it does use your supporter, but you can pull up any Pokemon from your opponent's bench. Now, this has several good things. You can use it to pull up an easy prize. If your opponent retreats something that's weak, pull it up to get another easy prize. Your opponent has a Pokemon that they're using that they're not necessarily using. Like, let's say they're using Garbodor, and your opponent's not attacking with Garbodor, they're using it for its ability. Well, go ahead and bring that on up. Go ahead and bring that on up. It takes 3 to retreat it. So the opponent is probably not going to use 3 energy to retreat it, unless they have another way to get around it. But that's just something you can use to make your opponent work around it. Because with that in regards, you'd be able to bring up anything on the field. I've had games where I will bring up Jirachi EX or Victini EX or a low EX, like a Mewtwo EX, and be able to knock it out and get those 2 prizes I need to win the game. Now, Lysandra is definitely, I'd have to say, in this last set,
probably one of the best supporters that got released.
It is. I would say at least from base XY, not counting the release of the Juniper reprint in the form of Professor Sycamore, I'd have to say it's probably the most meta-changing trainer that we're going to see from base XY, Flashfire, and Phantom Gate. Furious Fist, I apologize. Phantom Gate's the next set.
Well, I mean, that still remains to be seen because Furious Fist hasn't really hit the meta yet. But one thing you also got to consider is that, yes, Lysandra added some versatility. Now, guys, when you use Lysandra, you're using it not just, sometimes you can use it to stall. I've done it myself, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it don't. But the main way you want to use it is you want to pull up those threats. Now, let's take an example here. Let's say I'm playing against Keldeo Blastoise, the bane of my existence if you guys saw my Speed Charizard build. What I'm going to do, my deck personally, I run a lot of ways to get out of those types of situations because my deck has fast setup and high damage output. So what I need to do in order to shut down that Garbodor, get that Blastoise out of there, just get those guys out of there, is I need to pull them up. So what I do personally is I will do whatever it takes. I will Juniper away whatever I have to get into that catcher or that Sycamore or you guys know what I mean, that Lysandra if I have to. There's been times where I've, Ultra Balled for Jirachi to get computer search or to get Lysandra. You guys know what I'm saying.
They'll go through great lengths to cut out that engine. It's just like what we saw. What's still another big deck out there is Raybor. Use Rayquaza EX with that Emboar that lets you put as much fire energy as you have in your hand on the field as much as you want per turn. That's another big thing. You pull up that Emboar, you knock it out, get that prize, and then their engine is gone. They don't have that engine no more. It's another big thing with fairy decks that if you knock out that Aromatisse, well, whatever energy they have on the field, it's pretty much stuck there unless they bring out another Aromatisse.
And that's why, in the other build that we have posted, guys, be sure to check that out. The Future Online 619, his fairy deck, one main strategy that I asked him about is he actually keeps 2 Aromatisse set up at the same time for that very reason, because when you lose it, your energy's stuck. But if you have another one, it just kind of takes away the opponent's, what's the word I'm thinking of?
It makes it to where that it doesn't matter if they pull up an Aromatisse because they have another one the next turn. It
takes away their edge. That's what I was thinking of.
It's a safety net. So, like I said, it's the same instance. Like I've seen some Keldeo sets that will set up 2 Blastoise, and I'm like, that's really smart. That's what you need to do. But that comes down to, do I want to lose a bench spot to have a second one, and then how long will it take me to get that second one off? Because like everything else, it's a card game. It's random, and you never really know what's going to happen. So another big card, another big support that we're seeing a whole lot, actually we're seeing less of technically, would have to be Professor Sycamore or the more common Professor Juniper. Now what that card is, it's been doing the same thing since Professor Oak back in base set. You discard your entire hand and you draw 7, which gives you, at the moment, the best guaranteed draw power. There's nothing I love better than having no cards and top decking or drawing a Professor Juniper or a Professor Sycamore. That just makes my entire day so much better.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I can draw my entire hand back, because you start with 7, so it gives you a fresh hand. And that's why that card is seeing so much play, but we are seeing a lot less use. I remember before
Flash fired,
people were
decks were running. It was always at 4. Even fairies were still at 4, and even now, I think that a lot of decks in this meta just really can't, because being as we're losing so much. We're losing Level Ball, we're losing Heavy Ball, we're losing Super Rod. I mean, we're losing so much recycle power. People can't afford not just to drop Pokemon, but energy as well. And we've lost so much. The only deck that can really afford that is Fire.
Yeah, I would say Fire, or any deck, like we said, like Emboar or Keldeo Blastoise, that can drop their energy and then just get it back because they have superior energy retrieval. Decks that have text to accommodate that type of play. Decks that either,
and that's something to keep in mind, guys. If you're gonna run a deck like that, you want to play that way, where you can just discard whatever you want. Tech your deck accordingly, i.e., superior energy retrieval, regular energy retrieval.
Super Rod until it rotates next month.
Sacred Ash in this case. I mean, if you're gonna run both, and you don't need Super Rod until it rotates.
Yeah.
But the point of it is, guys, you need to tech against your play style. Like me personally, look at my Speed Charizard build. I run it through it fast. There's been games where I'm down to less than a third of my deck at the end of my second turn.
One time he triple skated me. He skated 3 times in a row, and he got them all off. And I was like, wow, it's a shame. And it's a shame I don't have an N in my hand. Oh wait, that's a perfect segue to the next card we're about to talk about, which is N.
Absolutely.
Which is as
viable.
Oni says here, is viable, but is also a double-edged sword, because what it does, for those that don't know, is that you and your opponent put your hand back into your decks, you shuffle, and then you draw as many prizes you have. It's a great late game card. Your opponent has that one prize, but just Juniper, and then attacked you. Oh, well, I'm going to end you. So get rid of those 7 cards, and now you draw 1. And hopefully it's a card you don't want. It's not a Juniper.
Yeah, well, let's take a deeper look at that, though. It says you end your opponent. Exactly. So that's where the double-edged sword comes in handy. Okay? Let's say you have a terrible hand, but you absolutely don't know what your opponent has. You don't know if they have a bad hand or a good hand. This has been something that has been happening since N's release. You'll get end first turn. You'll either lose a great hand, a meh hand, or an awful hand, which for your opponent, I mean, that can make or break the game for you guys. I mean, honestly, when I use N in a deck, it's a deck that needs to recycle, needs lots of draw power. In other words, I need to get a variety of cards every turn. Great example of that is fairies. Some fairy decks run it, some don't. Reason is that some fairy decks don't have to have that versatility. You have other ways to getting around it. And I really think in this next set, N is going to see a lot less play. That's a personal thing, just because when you look at it with the new set coming out, we have a bunch more supporters. Battle Reporter is totally, I think personally, is totally going to replace N.
It is also theoretically the best card draw now in the game, depending on situation, of course.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you could take cards like Fresh Juniper, say they got nothing, or I mean,
it's just the same instance with the Juniper. Let's say your opponent Junipers and they pass to you and you have no cards and you draw a Battlefield Reporter. Oh look, a Battle Reporter. Oh look, now I have 7 cards. And now, like you, I have a fresh hand as well. So I definitely agree. And N is one of my favorite cards because it's one of only 2 supports at the moment, including Lysandre, which we just mentioned, that can be used offensively and defensively. Defensively, like I said, end game, I've had a lot of games where I've had 2 prizes, my opponent has 1, and he has a whole hand, and I'm like, you know what? N, I want you to have 1. So let's see that way if I can maybe come back, or if you lose that 1 card you needed. Because a lot of people look at their hand and say, okay, I know what I'm going to do next turn. I love N because N says, you know what you're going to do next turn? You don't know yet because you're about to get a whole set of new cards, and I love that. And you can use it defensively and offensively. There's been a lot of times where I'll play my entire hand my first turn, and then I'll end and I'll get a fresh new hand of 6. It's like a Juniper, except you get 6, so you can use it both ways, which is why I think it's one of the better cards. Because like I said, it's one of the only 2 supporters right now that you can use offensively and defensively. Because all the other supporters right now we're about to go over only really deal with yourself. They don't really affect your opponent. Another good card we're seeing a lot of, which does something similar to N, would be Colress, which is a card that's been out since Plasma. What that does is that you yourself, you put your hand back into your deck, and then you shuffle and you draw as many cards as there are bench Pokemon on the field. Now, this is an excellent, excellent late game card.
My favorite card in this set.
Definitely. It is at the moment potentially the best draw power because if there's a full bench on both sides, you draw 10 cards, which
that's just incredible. I mean,
at the end game, that's when you get, and like I said, like I've mentioned previously, is that when you have a 60 card deck and you use a late game, you're drawing at that moment, a good third or half of your deck at that one time. And it's also really good because unlike Juniper, you don't have to discard your entire hand. So let's say you have cards you can't afford to lose, like Rare Candies, Evolutions, Gyms, Ultra Balls, stuff like that. Other supporters, you can just put them right back into your deck and to draw 10 brand new cards, which to me is really good. I wouldn't use it early game because normally the bench takes a little bit of time to fill up now that people are running less Pokemon. So Colress is pretty good. I love it. There's not a lot of downside to it.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean,
it's a great card.
Worst case scenario, I mean, there's a lot of decks out there. I mean, I've seen hands where I can fill my own bench on turn 1. I mean, and 5 cards. That's not bad if you run multiple Colress.
Oh yeah.
And we are seeing a lot higher count than we did when it first came out.
We are. I'm seeing decks with 2 to 3 of them nowadays, which is really, really surprising. And the good thing is that it's Plasma, so it's staying around for the rotation, which means we'll see it for this next season. Another good card that we've definitely been seeing more play of since there's more technical decks now is Skyla. What Skyla is that Skyla lets you pull any trainer from your deck. So you could pull an item, you can pull a stadium, you could pull a tool. You can even pull another support. Now
that's not really recommending, guys.
Now,
unless you absolutely have
to. I myself run 3 Skylas because I'm a very technical deck. I need a lot of items in my hand. I need Ultra Balls. I need Rare Candies. I need energy retrievals. I love Skyla. That's why I run it at 3 to 4 because it's definitely a very versatile card.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it got reprinted, so we'll be keeping that. We'll be keeping that one as well.
Yeah, but I mean, take a look at something like my deck. Yeah, I could absolutely use Skyla, but the reason I don't is I can compensate with other means. So that's another thing to think about, guys. Skyla is an absolutely amazing card, but there's other ways to compensate for that. My deck would probably run a little bit better if I did, but that takes up my supporter for the turn, which means I can't blacksmith and set up my Charizard completely. So that's not worth it to me. So there is other ways to compensate with pure draw power that's not a supporter, i.e. Bicycle and Roller Skates. Very good cards. Yeah, Bicycle is not all that great because I do whiff the tails a lot. There's been games where I've tailsed all of them, and it sucks. But there's also been games where I get N to 2 and draw 1 of each and just get this amazing late game setup, and it's just incredible.
Skyla's definitely going to keep seeing play. It's been seeing play since it's come out. And in the next set, there's also a Skyla per se, a Skyla predecessor for when it does rotate with Karina, which does let you get a fighting Pokemon and an item, which a lot of times I see Skylas generally go for items. So we're definitely not going to be losing its Skyla search ability anytime soon. And now the last support I want to talk about is another new support that I love, is Pokemon Fan Club.
Absolutely, that's great.
Which is pretty much a predecessor.
It's the same thing as
Collector.
Back in Heart Gold and Soul Surfer, we had Pokemon Collector that grabbed 3 Pokemon.
I wish that card was still available.
I mean, they had to drop it by 1 just because of the way the meta's going, man. I mean,
yeah.
And I mean, that's another hit or miss card, guys. I mean, if you're running a big basics deck and anything beside, you definitely run it.
If you're running Darkrai Yveltal, if you're running Keldeo Blastoise, if nothing else, even if you're running Evo decks, you're running,
especially Evo decks.
You're running Raybor. That lets you get a Rayquaza and a Tepig, or you already have a Rayquaza, Tepig, or you started 2 Tepigs, 2 Rayquazas. Boom, there you go. It saves you from using an Ultra Ball, and since we're losing Level Ball, which a lot of decks use to draw out those low levels, not the stage 1s, but the basics, that really helps you get out those basics that first turn. That first turn Fan Club almost guarantees that you will not be 1 turn knocked out from not having another Pokemon.
Absolutely.
It's definitely a really good card.
Yeah, we're going to be putting up a deck profile for you guys where
you're going to see my personal deck. I'm using a Greninja Miltank deck that I have topped at logos a lot. It's my own personal build, and we're going to post that video at another time, so we can go over.
Yeah, but I can definitely tell you guys, I played him when he didn't have the Fan Club.
It was not as fast. I was missing it.
Oh God, yeah.
I definitely was using Level Ball, which is rotating. That really helped me out get out Froakies. And now that Level Ball is rotating and I have Fan Clubs, I'm not really missing the Level Balls. Because there are some decks, like there's a certain Ninetales deck and there's EV decks that really, really require those Level Balls. I'm not missing the Level Ball at all. I actually can't wait for the rotation because I'm not going to miss it.
Yeah, it's something to consider, guys, when you start building your decks. Some of you might be in the middle of trying to decide, what am I going to build next? Or what am I going to build for this next season? Keep in mind of what's rotating.
September 3rd is the rotation. It's going to be boundaries crossing up. So we're losing Dragons Exalted, Dragons Vault, and Dark Explorers. Now, another big thing is that some of those cards have been reprinted in not only other sets, but also Legendary Treasures. So a big deck, for instance, is Darkrai Yveltal. The Darkrai got reprinted, and the Garbodor got reprinted twice. There's a shiny version in Plasma, and there's also got reprinted Legendary Treasures. So what I think is the card that's killing the meta, Garbodor, is going to be around for a long time.
And that's unfortunate, but at the very same time, guys, it's, I mean, there's ways around it, but what we're trying to say here is that when you make a choice to make a deck, think about what you're going to have available, because it hasn't happened yet. This is why I say this. The rotation has not happened yet. That doesn't mean you need to go out and spend money on those singles or waste all your trades on that stuff when you're only going to be able to play it in the unlimited format. Personally speaking, yeah, the unlimited format is going to be great. Extended format, it's going to be great, but I still don't see people going after it as much as the regular standard format.
Well, you did hear what they're doing next year for season, right? At like a state level, it's going to be a 2-day event. The first day is going to be standard format, and the second day is going to be extended. So if you top cut in the first day, the next day is going to be black, white, on. So you can still be running your standard deck, but people could be running those cards. So they're not going to be completely useless on a competitive level in states, regional, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Because they did just announce that. And they're also changing it to the matches are 1 of. That's Finally.
Yeah. I can't tell you guys.
4 a.m. top 8.
Check out the Future Online's video on his video after states. It's hilarious.
Very late.
Because it was terrible. We were doing best 2 out of 3. Honestly, let me kind of tell you guys a little bit about myself. I've been playing this game for a long time. I remember playing back in base set. I picked it back up when I was like 20 years old, which was just a couple years ago. And then I dropped it. And then less than 24 hours from the last states here in Colorado.
Before, not after.
Before that states, like the night before is when I picked the game back up. Like I bought a box of X and Y and borrowed a friend's deck and went, and I took top 40. So, I mean, the game comes with a lot of experience that you need, but but at the same time, you can gain that experience quickly if you get, basically, knowledge is power. We'll just put it that way.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next topic of what makes a good competitive deck. Is that we're going to go into something that people might not know about is some items you can put in your deck to get out that last extra bit of damage. The real big ones right now, starting with tools, is going to be what just came out in XY, which is Muscle Band, which is a universal plus 20 attack to all your Pokemon. And I frankly don't see if you're running one of those decks that does damage, which, wow, that's quite a lot.
You kind of have to do that to win because there's no mill decks anymore.
Yeah, you kind of have to do that to win. I don't see why Muscle Band couldn't be run at 2-4, depending on how you feel like playing. It could be run 2-4 on anything, because as long as you're running a deck where almost everything's attacking, even if you have to Juniper, you can still put that Muscle Band on something and just let it, Juniper away, and you still have that plus 20 damage.
Yep. We're not saying that to use 4 in every deck, guys.
No. It's just, I don't see why any reason you couldn't use minimum 2. To me, I feel like you need to use a minimum of 2, because just having 1, it doesn't feel like
it's not going to be consistent.
It's not going to be consistent.
Won't draw a prize.
Yeah. Or if you lose it, because there are some anti-tool items in the game still, Tool Scrapper, Megaphone, that you lose it and then it's gone. You get 1 turn of it. So another big one is Silver Bangle, which is one of my favorite. That's where you do plus 30 damage to an EX as long as it's on a non-EX. That's definitely a really big card right now. That's still going to be around, because that extra 30 damage, that extra 10 damage from that Bangle, if you're not running EXs, can really make it or break it. I definitely know that my personal combo I have in the deck needs a Bangle. That Bangle has helped me out so many times.
If you look at things like Pyro with the Bangle.
Yeah. Pyro with the
it's just terrible.
Pyro with the Bangle, you pretty much don't even have to discard the energy. You're doing 90 damage without discarding any energy to an EX. And they can't attack you back. If it's an EX, they can't hit you back.
You can do the same thing with Suicune, guys.
It's the same thing with Suicune.
Except they're doing 100 damage, which is a little bit of a plus, but Pyro still has that option for an extra 30.
Yeah, and then you could still you could even use it on the Safeguard Sigilif. That's still rotating around. You can still use it on that. Another big thing out right now is there's a lot of stadiums right now that help out with stuff. There's Aspera City Gym, which gives normal Pokemon plus 20 HP.
Hello, Kangaskhan.
Exactly, which is another big card we're seeing in the last set. There's Burbank City Gym, which means a 1 poison counter now counts as 2 additional. So
30 damage per turn in between turns. Think about it this way: you poison your opponent's Pokemon. In between that turn, that's 30. By the time it gets back to your turn, that's 60 damage every turn you take once they're poisoned.
Exactly.
Which is great.
Which is good, because especially with the Toxicroak we just saw, that means that you're doing 5 points of damage for 1 double colorless energy, which is really easy. That's a 1-turn setup. With that Toxicroak we're seeing from Flashfire, we're seeing a lot more poison decks. There's a lot more poison decks floating around.
Which is probably why they opted for the...
That's probably why Sparkling Robe and Full Heal are coming back into the game, because there's a lot of conditions.
Yeah. Things like Ninetales, they just want to get that out of there. But anyway, guys, kind of moving forward, Hypnotoxic Laser and Verbank is the main combo we're seeing. If your deck doesn't have quite the push, like, let me give you guys an example. Some of you guys, some of you younger kids and stuff, we all love EXs, but not all of them have the power to...
They don't have that knockout power. They don't have that really big knockout. They just don't have that finishing hit to really...
Great example. Here's a great example from back in the day. Reshiram EX. Okay? Great example. Does a lot of damage with the new card from Flashfire, Protection Cube. You don't have to worry about that 50 damage knockback. So what are you going to do for that extra 30? Well, perfect example. Burbank City Gym, Hypnotoxic Laser, instant poison. And you will instantly knock them out with no negative fallbacks to that attack. I actually helped a guy online build that deck in kind of a speed version of it to help him kind of pick that kind of thing up. So, if you guys want to look into a deck that's very cheap to build, a budget deck per se that's really powerful, can counter the meta, you can look into things like, you could literally go out and buy 4 Miltank and go from there. There's Butterfree Miltank, there's Shiftry Miltank, Greninja Miltank, Empoleon Dust Noir Miltank, Delphox Miltank.
And now, especially in that regards, to especially pinpoint on that is that Milting, the new one that you do 10 plus 70 damage for 1 energy. If you have a stage 2 on the bench, the two of the big versions we're seeing is Butterfree, the new Butterfree from Flashfire, and Shiftry, which you're seeing from Flashfire. So that means that you could, from just one set of cards, make an entire Pokemon deck. You would need to support, what we went over earlier, but the Pokemon would all be inclusive in one set. And since they're all uncommon, besides the Shiftry, which is a rare, you wouldn't really have any hard time finding. In fact, I pull a lot of Miltanks.
Absolutely, and I did too. Another deck, like I said, Reshiram. I mean, you could take an old EX like that if you find a way to speed set it up. Check out my Speed Charizard build, guys. That's exactly how I would do it if I wanted to run Reshiram. It's basically the same thing. You just need the Hypnotoxic to push for that extra damage. But I mean, it's ideas like that. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to trade a lot of your cards away. These are decks that will work, can potentially Cody go from a beginner to, I mean, he just took first and second
2 weeks in a row.
2 weeks in a row, and I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I was a beginner once too, and I'm to the point where I top almost every week as well.
It's just with budget decks, it's really nice because even with the promo versions of cards being out there, if you can't find a trade for it or you can't find anywhere to buy it online, that means you'd still be spending that $20 to buy that 10 for that one promo. So it's definitely, the budget decks are really nice because you're able to use just cards that you might have laying around. You might have a stack of Miltank and a stack of Butterfree. Hey, I've seen people at our locals take top 3 with those decks, which that's what it's all about. It's all about hitting that next level of competition, topping at locals, and then saying, you know what, I'm going to go try on a regional, city, a state level, and then see how I do from there. If you want to take it to that competitive nature, which is what this series is all about. So I think that about wraps it up for today.
Yeah, I think that's about it for this episode, guys. But be sure to check us out and our future videos. We're going to be posting some more deck profiles, and we're going to get up as much content as we can. I know there's a lot of you guys on Pokemon Online who've been hitting me up, and feel free to message me if I'm online. AdrianOni22 is my username. Please feel free to message me if you have questions, comments, concerns, or comment in the comments below. I will answer to all of them as best I can. And please comment and subscribe if you need any of the answers, and be sure to like this video as well, guys. But hey, thanks for watching or